शेयर कहाँ से अरुणिमा?
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the IT Mesra fraternity, I would like to extend a warm and hearty welcome to our workshop on research methodology, organized by Birla Institute of Technology off campus Lalpur, Ranchi. It's a great pleasure to have amidst us our special guest, Dr. Avinash Kumar Sinha. A special welcome to our director, Dr. Vandana Bhattacharjee ma'am, who has been kind enough to support our endeavor. A very warm welcome to our esteemed faculty members, our other guests and attendees present here. A special welcome. Our guest speaker for today, Dr. Avinash Kumar Sinha, is an eminent scholar of Birla Institute of Technology, Lalpur, off campus, Ranchi. Specializing in the area of risk management in banking institution in India. Dr. A.K. Sinha sir will be discussing about research talk on finance, Basel norms of banking industry. Sir, having you with us is a refulgence and a source of inspiration for the students present here. Now I request Dr. Avinash Kumar Sinha sir to take forward with the session. Please, sir.
Thank you, Astha. A warm good evening to all of you present here. Basically, I'm going to speak on the Basel norms, which is a comprehensive risk management framework meant for all the banks across the globe. So, when we talk about Basel norms, uh, it becomes imperative that what are the driving forces that caused the development of this framework. So, largely, the reason goes to the subprime crisis, which took place in the year 2007-8 in US. Subprime crisis was the major reason, but its foundation was laid in late 90s. Actually, the reason was the excessive liberalization of banks performing in the region of US and Europe. The excessive liberalization resulted in subprime crisis, and that is why the authorities, or we can say regulators, came together, uh, uh, basically under the leadership of UK and US, along with some countries of European region, and they decided there should be a framework, okay, that could address the problem of insolvency of banks, because subprime crisis is basically related with the insolvency problem of banks. As we know, the typical nature of banks is they deal with public money. They accept deposits, they extend loans, they make investments, and if loans are not returned on time and investments go bad, it results in a situation which is fatal to the bank. And we can say it results in insolvency of banks. They are not in a position to refund the fund to the borrowers, to the customers. Sorry, not borrowers, it is customers of banks. So, this is a kind of insolvency situation for the banks. Just in order to cater to this situation, the regulators thought there should be a framework that should be in place that could address the problem of insolvency across the banking platform. Today's discussion I have divided into three segments. The first segment is dealing with the factors that were responsible for the subprime crisis. The second segment is the structure of the Basel framework itself. And third segment is related with, I have actually tried to connect one of my papers in this segment, which could help, which could facilitate a kind of impact analysis. Okay. I mean, in other words, we can say application of Basel norms in Indian industry, banking industry, and we could have some idea, some insights on what could be the probable impacts on the bank. So these three segments are there, which we'll talk about today. So starting from the first segment, basically the total discussion is based on some slides where I have tried to incorporate the important features, aspects of Basel norms. And I would request all the participants that if they come across any confusion regarding terms and jargons that I will use during the discussion, they can ask during my discussion. And at the end also, I will give you enough time to ask questions. Okay, so that will be the way I'll deal with the things. Okay, so I would like to refer to the slides. I hope the slides are visible.
Yes.
Causes of subprime crisis. Although the exact causes of the financial crisis are a matter of dispute among economists, there is a general agreement regarding the factors that played a role. So though the scholars and economists were not unanimous on the factors that contributed to the crisis, yet they were unanimous on some of the factors that could have contributed to the crisis, which have been discussed here. First, the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the US, having anticipated a mild recession that began in 2001, reduced the federal funds rate 11 times between May 2000 and December 2001, from 6.5% to 1.75%. That significant decrease enabled banks to extend consumer credit at a lower prime rate and encouraged them to lend even to subprime or high-risk customers at higher interest rates. So basically, Federal Reserve is the central bank of US, as we know, and it is responsible for drafting the monetary policy for the country, which largely affects the countries across the globe. So federal rates are closely linked with the lending rates of banks there. Okay. And we can see here that banks in US reduced the rates from 6.5% to 1.75%. That was a significant decrease. And especially the loans were extended to subprime borrowers. Subprime borrowers are borrowers having fewer assets to show as backup for the loan. At the same time, they do not enjoy good credit standing in the market. So banks offered loans to them at higher rate of interest. So that is what is the first point is talking about. Second, many banks aggressively marketed subprime loans to customers with poor credit or fewer assets, knowing that those customers could not afford to repay the loan after misleading them about the risks involved. As a result, the share of subprime mortgages among all home loans increased from about 2.5% to nearly 15% per year from the late 90s to 2004-2007. So you can just imagine the increase. The subprime mortgage loans increased from 2.5% to 15% per year. Third, which is the most important part, according to me, that is contributing to the growth of subprime lending was the widespread practice of securitization, whereby banks bundle together or even thousands of subprime mortgages and other less risky forms of consumer debt and sold them or pieces of them in capital market as securities, bonds to other banks and investors, including hedge funds and pension funds. So basically, securitization is a process where banks uh, created bundles of subprime mortgage loans, and converted them into bonds. This is known as securitization. These bonds are also known as mortgage-backed bonds. So these bonds were sold to different investors across the globe. Hedge funds, pension funds, and other banks were the major investors. And that was the main problem, I think, because when the prices of, real estates came down, this securitization affected the system in a big manner. We'll see later. Fourth, in 1999, the Depression era Glass-Steagall Act 1933 was partially repealed, allowing banks, securities firms, and insurance companies to enter each other's markets and to merge, resulting in the formation of banks that were too big to fail. So this is also an alarming point. Due to the repealed Glass-Steagall Act 1933, the banks, insurance companies, and securities firms were allowed to enter into each other's arena, where they got merged as well. This merger resulted in, growth in size of them, and that created a pseudo kind of feeling among them that they were too big to fail. This kind of feeling basically helped the banks to continue with their practices they adopted under liberalized environment. In addition, in 2004, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is like SEBI for USA, weakened the net capital requirement, which encouraged banks to invest even more into MBS. So this reduction in net capital requirement, actually this capital requirement is linked to the total assets, including on and off balance sheet assets of the banks, which was reduced. So banks were having more funds, more liquid funds to invest in the market, and they went for mortgage-backed securities. Fifth, increase in Federal Reserve rate as a part of contractionary monetary policy led to defaults made by the subprime borrowers, causing a decline in real estate prices and eventually bank failures. So, as I told you that Federal Reserve is responsible for drafting, formulating the monetary policy for the country. It provides a range also within which the rate may fluctuate, right? So in 2022, I think it was increased by 25 basis points, and it is 0 to 0.50%, basically. So they can play within this particular range, banks. So when Federal Reserve anticipated a slight increase in inflation rate in the country, it increased the rate. And due to increase of this federal rate, default started on the part of subprime borrowers. They started defaulting. Now they had kept real estates as collaterals with the banks. So banks started seizing them and started selling them in the open market. So it was a situation where there was an excessive supply of real estate, followed by less demand. Nobody was there in the system to purchase it due to, problems with the prices of real estates. So that led to further decrease in prices of real estates. And I would like to link it with the securitization process, which we have dealt with in the third point, that the investors across the globe invested in this bonds created by the banks there. This is also referred as financial engineering. They went for a very high level of financial engineering, and they could not decide the point beyond up to which they should have gone in creating the securities. Now, what happened? When investors across the globe felt that there is a falling prices of real estates, okay, which are the collaterals of the securities they had invested in. So they started they started demanding their money back from the issuers, and that was the bank run situation. That was the bank run situation because at once all the investors had started demanding their funds to be returned. And that was the main cause of the bank failures in US, which is known as subprime mortgage crisis. So that is a brief about the factors that are supposed to have contributed to uh, the subprime crisis. Now I would like to come to the second segment, that is the Basel structure. The regulators felt that there is a need to create such a framework offer that could offer a comprehensive risk management framework for the banks, and can address to the problem of insolvency. Though this is not the case with Indian banks, because Indian banking is dominated by public sector banks, and we do not work under that much liberalized environment. Still, we'll have to follow the framework. So let's see what are the features of Basel I. The 1988 Accord, which is also known as Basel I, called for a minimum ratio of capital to risk-weighted assets of 8% to be implemented by the end of 1992. Ultimately, this framework was introduced not only in member countries, but also in all countries with active international banks. So all those countries, all those banks having international presence are required to follow this model, this structure, just in order to provide a level playing field to all the players across the globe, in banks. Now, 8% was required to be kept as capital by the bank of its risk-weighted assets. Now, when we talk about risk-weighted assets, we are talking about three types of risks: credit risk, market risk, and operational risk. These three types of risks are identified, okay, under Basel framework. Credit risk is basically related with the risk of default. Market risk is referring to the risk involved in investments due to market forces like market variables like interest rate, inflation, rate of inflation, maybe there, foreign exchange risk. Okay, these are the factors affecting the investments, equity prices, commodity prices. So this is about credit risk, market risk, and then operational risk is linked with the core operation of the banks. It may incorporate system failure risk, money laundering risk, personnel risk, okay, country risk, and so on. Liquidity risks also come under that. So basically, the idea is all those risks which can't be put either in the category of credit risk or market risk will be put under operational risk category. The Basel Committee also refined the framework to address risks other than credit risk, which was the focus of the 1988 Accord. The Basel Committee identified, apart from credit risk, there are elements, okay, which are causing the market risk. So they started feeling. In January 1996, following two consultative processes, the committee issued the amendment to the Capital Accord to incorporate market risks to take effect at the end of 1997. An important aspect of the market risk amendment was that banks were for the first time allowed to use internal models like VAR, value at risk, as a basis for measuring their market risk capital requirements subject to quantitative and qualitative control. Here in India, to start with, we have been advised, RBI has advised to the banks to adopt duration model, that is modified duration model in place of VAR, to measure general market risk for the investments. Basel II. Pillar 1 is based on the calculation of minimum capital requirements, which sought to develop and expand the standardized rules set out in the 1988 Accord. So basically, Basel II was trying to give a structure to the topics, to the things discussed under Basel I, so that we could come up with a particular structure or framework that could be there in place. Pillar 2 suggests supervisory review of an institution's capital adequacy and internal assessment process. So I would like to focus on Pillar 1 again. Pillar 1 is basically related with the calculation of minimum capital requirements. So capital requirements depend on the calculation of risk-weighted assets for credit risk, market risk, and operational risk, all the three risks. Okay. So in brief, I can say, while measuring the credit risk-weighted assets for credit risk weights are assigned to various loans extended by banks. On that basis, we arrive at the risk-weighted assets. This risk weights are provided by the RBI. Okay, because to start with, we are through a very nascent stage of risk management. So RBI is suggesting these credit risk weights, to be adopted by the banks. Similarly, in case of market risk, we have adopted modified duration model, as I told you, to measure general market risk. And for specific risk, we have 9% of capital requirement. In case of operational risk, we have a formula that is gross annual income multiplied by lambda, which is a figure, which is a percentage value, 15%, for the last 3 years profit if positive, okay, divided by number of years, that is 3. So this gives the capital charge. Now in case of market risk, it also gives the capital charge, not risk-weighted assets. It gives capital charge for market risk, this operational risk. Operational risk formula also gives capital charge for operational risk. Now these are required to be converted into risk-weighted assets. Now the formula will be capital charge multiplied by 100 by 9. Because in this case, the capitalization factor will become 100 by 9. And we will arrive at the respective risk-weighted values, risk-weighted assets for market risk and operational risk. Then we'll add all the 3, and 9% in India, actually, Reserve Bank has suggested 9% as CAR. So 9% of the total risk-weighted assets should be kept as capital by the banks, okay, in order to counter the problem of insolvency. This is what Pillar 1 says. Pillar 2 suggests supervisory review of an institution, capital adequacy, and internal assessment process. So banks have been given liberalization to work on developing their internal risk-based models, subject to taking permission from RBI. Okay, so that they can assess the capital requirement in more stringent way, because excessive capital, okay, may lead to higher cost to the bank. In June 1999, the committee issued a proposal for a new capital adequacy framework to replace the 1988 Accord. This led to the release of a revised capital framework in June 2004, generally known as Basel II. It also incorporated operational risk. As I told you, as I discussed the formula, the revised framework comprised 3 pillars: Pillar 1, 2, and 3. Pillar 3 calls for effective use of disclosures as a lever to strengthen market discipline and encourage sound banking practices. So basically, this pillar is related with the disclosure requirements on the part of banks. They need to disclose information. They need to furnish information which are closely related to the risk, overall risk of the banks, to various stakeholders, so that they could take decision about the investments and deposits and all related activities. Okay. So here comes the disclosure requirements. So you may find in the annual reports of different banks at the end, the Basel information are given. Okay. So they may not prove to be sufficient, because if you want to look for, say, specific risk or types of industries where the bank invested, or if you want to know something about the internal information about the investments or loans, you may not find there. And that is the challenge before the banks. They should encourage these things so that the stakeholders could get adequate information on time. Basel III, the enhanced Basel framework, revises and strengthens the 3 pillars established by Basel II and extends in several areas. Most of the reforms are being phased in between 2013 and 2019. Stricter requirements for the quality and quantity of regulatory capital, in particular, reinforcing the role of common equity. So, in a nutshell, I would like to tell you that in Basel III, basically focus has been provided on increasing the common equity part as capital. Because if we look at the capital structure of the banks, we will find tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 capitals are allowed, okay, as capital. So banks may go for tier 2 and tier 3 capitals because they have to offer, they have to issue, in that case, bonds, subordinated bonds, which are unsecured in nature. Okay, they can do that. Still, they can show capital with them. In Basel III, strictly it has been advised to the banks that they should go for equities rather than bonds. An additional layer of common equity, that is the capital conservation buffer, that is 2.5% of the total risk-weighted assets, apart from the other requirements, is required to be maintained by the banks. A counter-cyclical buffer which places restrictions on participating banks by in system-wide credit booms with the aim of reducing their losses and credit costs. So those banks which are working under a situation of boom, or they are working under a bit liberalized environment, they should go for maintaining counter-cyclical buffer as well, apart from capital conservation buffer. So basically, these are putting pressure on common equity only. That has to be kept in mind. A minimum amount of loss-absorbing capital related to all of a bank's assets, off-balance sheet exposures, regardless of risk weighing. The liquidity coverage ratio is intended to provide enough cash to cover a 30-day period of stress. As the name is suggesting, liquidity coverage is referring to the maintenance of cash for the purpose, and a longer term ratio, that is net stable funding ratio, intended to address maturity mismatches over the entire balance sheet. Now I would like to discuss one of my papers with you so that we could have an idea about the application of Basel norms and its impact on the Indian banking industry. So I would like to come to the discussion and findings and discussion section. Yes, so discussion and findings. So the first point is expected and unexpected losses are uniform across banks. So one thing I would like to tell you, those who are not from finance background, that there is a difference between expected and unexpected losses. Expected losses are mean losses, and unexpected losses are standard deviation of losses, of mean losses. So when we talk about maintenance of capital, we are talking about unexpected losses, right? Not expected losses. But in case of Basel structure, for expected losses, we are maintaining almost 100% provisioning. Actually, for expected losses, we go for provisioning. We are maintaining almost 100% provisions. And for unexpected losses part, we are maintaining 9% of capital, which is uniform across banks. That sounds little irrelevant, okay? Because banks may have different, loss experiences, right? So this may lead to higher capital requirement on their part. So I have tested it also. I have taken gross NPA as percentage, and I calculated the standard deviation of that from 2006 to 11. And I found it was 0.6% only. I'm talking about standard deviation, 0.6% of public sector banks. Now, as per Basel norms, it is 9%. It's a great difference. Okay, so that is definitely leading to higher capital requirements on the part of banks. Okay. And one more thing I would like to tell you at this point of time, that we are not considering the cost of equity here. Though we are going to issue equity shares and all, but we are not considering the cost of equity here. Had we considered that, the result would have been different. The banks may incur losses as well. Okay. The next point is overcapitalization of public sector banks. Now you can see the capital adequacy ratios maintained by different banks. Okay. It is well above 9%. What does it mean? They are maintaining capital, and at the same time we are not looking for cost of equity. So it is resulting into higher cost of capital, okay, for the banks, and that is basically affecting their lending rates. If you want to compare the banks with foreign banks, okay, the cost part is very important here. We are not in a position to compete with them in terms of costs, and these are the reasons. Okay, these are the reasons. Then we can see capital needs of public sector banks from 2008 to 2012, projected risk-weighted assets increasing trend, and projected capital requirement is also showing an increasing trend, you can see. So this projected capital requirement is basically, again, a burden on the banks to raise capital from them. Now the next point is capital adequacy under Basel III versus existing norms. You can see here, common equity after reduction, some allowances are deductible and provisions, 4.5%, Existing RBI norms 3.6%. Conservation buffer 2.50 nil. Counter cyclical buffer 0 to 2.5% nil presently, according to RBI. Common equity, including conservation buffer and counter cyclical buffer, it is 7 to 9.5%, just addition of that. Tier 1, including the buffers, 8.5 to 11%, and total capital, including the buffers, 10.5 to 13%. You can see. Okay, existing is 9%. So Basel III is going to be an additional burden on the Indian banks, especially public sector banks, because they are not working under such liberalized environment, and at the same time they have to follow the same set of rules. Now the increasing financial risk, this is quite obvious that if we are going for more and more capital, definitely financial risk will increase, as the regulator has allowed tier 2 and tier 3 capital. They are in the form of bonds, subordinated bonds. Okay, so they are basically, financial risk refers to the interest rate that is committed by the company, okay, to offer to the bondholders. So that will definitely increase. Now, increasing fiscal burden on government. This is very important, because I'm remembering one of the statements of late or former finance minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley. He told that the government will not be able to meet the needs of the public sector banks anymore. They will have to arrange for their own things, like they should open their own subsidiaries, respective subsidiaries, to raise funds. Okay, so this is we can say a mechanism suggested by the former late finance minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley. But you can see the increasing financial burden. Basically, it is a burden on government. On one hand, it is avoiding the subsidy part. On the other, it has to, give the capital to the banks. This is a paradox. Regulators ignore the role of profits in deciding capital adequacy of banks. This is also very important and alarming thing. Like, profit is an important part, okay, which takes care of the losses. So apart from that, they are going for capital requirement, right? So when profits are sufficient to absorb the jolt of losses due to credit market and operational, why are we going for further capital? Okay, that is a question to be answered. Other impacts. Now we can see public sector banks and SBI Group. Actually, this paper is based on the information of SBI Group. PSBs and SBI Group, where the government holds controlling interest, have a substantial share in the banking business. If these banks have to raise additional capital, the government may not be in a position to pump in the desired capital, as I told. In that event, PSBs will have to raise funds from the market, which may result in dilution of the government's stake. If the government has to retain the controlling stake in these banks, it has to introduce newer debt instruments which can qualify as tier 2 or tier 3 capital. So this is the challenge before the government. Second point, the Indian capital market has not matured enough as compared to markets in the developed countries. Banks may face difficulties in raising the required additional funds to meet the regulatory requirements. Third is credit rating culture has not penetrated sufficiently in India. There are very few credit rating agencies. The RBI will have to approve rating agencies for the purpose of allowing banks to use their own ratings for qualification of credit risk. Because under standardized approach, I should tell you, while managing credit risk, standardized approach has been prescribed by the bank, by the regulator, that is RBI, in the beginning. Now it suggests banks can also get their borrowers rated from one of the credit rating agencies approved by uh, RBI. Okay. So as this is a costly affair, okay, most of the banks are not in a position to do that, to follow that. So this point three appears to be quite important here. Fourth, the internal rating practices in a majority of banks are not sophisticated enough to take care of Basel II requirements. So internal rating practices requires so many things like uh, availability of data on time, okay, skilled manpower, right, resources as a whole. So that is not the case with the Indian banking. Some of the private banks are techno-savvy. Competition from the private and foreign banks has also induced public sector banks to initiate the process of adoption of modern technology. Yet, the entire banking sector will be required to invest substantial amount in IT to enable banks to be ready for implementation of the new requirements of risk management. As I told, that proper management of data and availability of data and furnishing the data across different levels, okay, are very important. And this is the challenge before the Indian banking sector. There is scarcity of the required skill staff in the banks. Training may become a big challenge in the process. Even the RBI may face a challenge for training staff for effective supervision as envisaged by Basel II. Lastly, there are certain gaps in disclosure practices currently being followed by the Indian banks, and the requirements under Pillar 3 bank management may face new challenges on this front. Besides, there is a lack of awareness among the Indian public about the effective use of information disclosed. So I had discussed this aspect, but again I'm telling you, while disclosing the information based on Basel 2 or Basel 3 requirements, actually there are some uh, drawbacks. Okay, if one wants to look for, say, specific risk category, okay, what are the investments which are qualifying for investments for a specific risk? What are the instruments qualifying for general market risk? The details about that are not given, are not furnished by the banks. So that is the challenge that should be addressed by the banks, so that a proper knowledge among the various stakeholders, including borrowers, could be emanated so that they could take wise decisions. Right. So, with these words, I would like to end my discussion, and now you are free to ask any question, okay, related to the topic. Am I audible? Hello. Hello. Am I
Sir,
audible?
you're audible,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, yes. So, if you want to ask anything, you can ask. Anything related with the framework, paper, or factors that we have discussed. If you have come across any problem, you can ask. Then, with these words, I would like to end my session. Thank you very much to all of you.
Sir, I'll,
Yes.
okay, so I'll end. I would like to express our deep thanks on behalf of Birla Institute of Technology, Lalpur, off campus, to our guest, Dr. Avinash Kumar Sinha, sir, for such an amazing and informative presentation and giving us an insight on this relevant topic. We look forward to conduct more such events hereafter with Dr. Avinash Kumar Sinha in the future. We will be taking forward this session with Dr. Najendra Prasad Tiwari. I would like to extend a warm and hearty welcome to our research methodology workshop. Welcome, sir. Sir has joined.
Who is joining?
Okay. Dr. Nare, Dr. Nagin, sir, are you there? Good afternoon, sir.
Let's start the session.
Yeah. Dr. Nagendra Prasad Tiwari is an eminent scholar of Birla Institute of Technology, Lalpur, off campus Ranchi, specializing specifically in the area of network and web security. Dr. N.P. Tiwari, sir, will be discussing research talk on web security. Sir, having you with us is a refulgence and a source of inspiration for the students present here. Now, I request Dr. N.P. Tiwari, sir, to of, from this take forward this session.
Good afternoon, very good afternoon to
Good
respected
afternoon, sir.
members, director ma'am, and members of the organizing committee, Dr. S. Anis Haider, Dr. Satyajit Chaudhary, and participants. So I would like to thanks to the members of the organizing committee for giving me opportunity to share my view on this platform. Now, as we all are aware with the fact that we human being, in compared to the universe, are just like a point, a dot, very, very small. But do you know? We are trying to command over the universe. Do you know why? Since the God has given us a small, beautiful things. And what is that? That is a brain. That differentiates us from the other animals. But unfortunately, we people are not utilizing our brain in constructive words. Now the today talks that a part of this, that we human beings are utilizing our brain not only for the constructive work. Few of us are using their brain for the destructive work. Their knowledge base, their idea, their experience, they always try to use in destructive work. So that talk, web security, that is a reason. That's why there is a need of security to protect the web resources. All of you are using waves. We all are using. Do you know what is wave? Anybody? Is my screen visible to you? Hello? Yes. Hello? Not visible?
No, sir.
Yes, yes. Is visible now?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Is it visible? This one.
Yes, sir, now.
Not visible. That's what is happening. Come, please. That's right. That will be one. Is it visible? Hello? Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, it's visible.
Visible. Okay. Okay, so what is World Wide Web? WWW. All of us, we are using World Wide Web. Okay. Is it visible? Not yet. Check it. Is it visible or not?
Not yet, sir.
It's visible.
Not yet.
Okay. This is the problem. Now,
No, sir.
what is happening? In this way, I will not be able to put it. Just wait. The entire screen share capture. Okay, is it visible? Yes. But that will not be in the presentation mode. Okay, so carry on. Anyway, okay, we go in the same mode. That's all right. Fine. We go in the same mode. That's all right. The presentation is not supporting. Fine. So now we start here. We are what is hypertext documents? Hypertext documents are basically stored in hypertext format and then loaded into the web server. Then web server is connected to the internet. Then many clients, they can access these documents through the internet. But at the client side, there should be a special software that is called browser. So if you see the basic component of World Wide Web, so these components are web server, TCP connection, and web browsers. Web servers, it's an special applications that runs on the server. TCP connections that will be available on the server, clients, as well as different nodes of the internet. So internet means network. Network of networks. Now, these all are interconnected through the internet, and the client can communicate with web server using a special protocol that is called HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Got the point? So this Hypertext Transfer Protocol can make the communication available between web server and the web browsers. Got the point? If you see the interactions of between the web server and the different clients, so we can find here, this is a connection between client and the web server. Different clients are there. Different clients are there. They can communicate with the web server using internet. Now, at the client side, there will be TCP. Here will also be TCP. And at the internet side, there will also be the TCP. So TCP is basically a 5-layer architecture where at every layer, there are a set of or collection of protocols. So we use that protocols to establish the communication between web server and the client. And the communication goes through the different paths. And the paths to establish the connection and the moment of communication between web browser and the client is provided by the internet. If you see the security, then why security is required? Why the web should be secure? So first come to the web security. What do you mean by web security? So first it's an introduction about the web, World Wide Web. Now we are coming to the web security. Why do we need web security? There should be some reason behind that. First come to the definition of the web security. What is web security and why it is required? What is web security? Web security is a broad categories of security solution that protect users, devices, network, and protocol software different protocol or the different application software against the internet-based cyber attacks. What are these internet-based cyber attacks? Like malware, phishing, virus, worm, Trojan horse, many others. Many web security solutions reduces the security risk, and their organizations may use the security solutions to secure their resources. Now the question is that why web security is required? If you see the need of web security, then we go to the service-oriented architecture. What is service-oriented architecture? What do you mean by service-oriented architecture? See the service-oriented architecture. Here is the service provider. Now the service consumers who consume the services. Now here the web services. So the basic purpose of the web services is to transfer the services available at the service provider to the service consumers. So this architecture is the service-oriented architecture. Now we Am I audible to you? Hello? Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
So, we discuss about ransomware. Did I discuss? We were discussing about the ransomware. So what is ransomware? We are not going in details in that. See, the ransomware, see, suppose someone on your device, and there are many files or data. What will happen? The attackers try to encrypt data, and decryption key is not provided to the actual users. Then the user may not be able to read data. And in place to provide the decryption key, it demands handsome amount. So these attacks encrypt data and then demand a ransom payment in exchange for a decryption key. This is a trend. Basically, it's a one type of phishing. This is also available in Android also. Right? Next is phishing. This is another type of attacks. This is also. What is phishing? Someone sends, if we have time, I will share some software that will go to you and you will see, just type some your details and I can tell you what are the details that you have entered in the form. Clear? So this phishing is basically attackers try to send a link. When you click on that link, it asks you to provide some details and somehow it accesses your credential. Got the point? So normally it happens in case of mail. Yeah. And these credentials are made available to the attackers and then the attackers can harm later. So this is called phishing. Another is denial of services. Denial of services is, what is denial of services? These attacks slow or even shut down a network device such as server by sending it more data very fast and your computer may not be able to process it. Then it can process. A variance of DOS attack is a DDoS attack, where a number of attacks sent simultaneously to the different places. Now that grows and suppose different nodes are connected. Suppose in IoT, in that case, it goes to the one node, then that node forward to the next node, then that node forward to the next node, then that node forward to the next node. See, this attack is having one feature. Before attacking on a particular device, it first forward that is attacker software to the next. Once that is infected, then it will not be able to forward it. So that is one kind of attacks. Now SQL injections. What is SQL injections? What is SQL injections? SQL injections, these attacks exploit an input vulnerability in a database server and allowing an attacker to execute commands. That command are sent to the server in SQL form. That is a structured query language. Then the commands are executed. And when the commands are executed, now that can get access to the actual database. And in the database will be in the hand of, you see how you send the SQL commands to the web server. Now this get executed, then the entire database will be in the hand of the hacker or attackers. So this is another type of attacks. Now another is the general malware. You find the various malwares are viruses, Trojan, rootkits, worm, spyware, crimeware, adware. Adware normally it's nothing, it's not going to harm, but slow down your machine. When you run particular application or you try to do something, download or something, some activity on the internet, automatically some ad comes. Its basic purpose is to generate fund or money for the developer. And from where the developer gets money? Developer gets money from the ad. So this is also one type of attacks. Clear? Sorry, threats to your web server. Now cross-site scripting, this is another attack. In this type of injection attack, an attacker introduces malicious code to a trusted website by entering it in an unprotected user input field. Got the point? Next. So that's all about your some common threats. Not it's an end of threats. Every day, the attackers try to have what will be the next type of attack in coming day. Who will be the next target group? So their research is in this direction. And once the attacks comes, then the security solution providers, they attempt to provide the solution to that threats. So this is not the ends, only these common threats are there, what I discussed. Now, if you see the security model, the security models have the three basic components: system model, threat models, and the security models. Due to the short of times, we are not going to discuss these things in details. What are these? System model, threats model, and the security models. So leave this, right? We are coming to your requirements. What are the different area of web securities? Where we can find your research topic. Different area of the web security are human factors in web security, phishing in web-based communication, key continuity management applications, email authentication, cryptography and web application security, studies on various attacks, user background and training. These are the different areas of web security. So first come to human factors in web security. The human factors in web security represents the action or events when human error result in successful hack of database. Due to human error, suppose sometime you get a mail, click on that link. Your credit card details need to be updated right now. You have received the details, this link from the bank. Now you click on that link, provide your details. Now that details goes to the attacker premises. So somehow the attacker gets your details, your credential, and later on the attacker can damage it. So this happens due to human error. So human factors of web security represents the action or events when human error result in unsuccessful hack of database. Now you may have the impression that hackers are simply looking for a weak entry point that naturally exists within a system. The hacker finds a weak link that was caused by the human hands. If you see a famous quote by Rostock, that security specialists acknowledge that the people are the biggest link of the fraud, and this should not be ignored. If you ignore this, then there can be a huge damage to the organization or to the enterprise. So now, what are the common threats inside an organization? The common threats inside an organization are weakness and faults exist in it, the software itself, unintended leak of data due to errors caused by human being, theft or loss of mobile handheld devices, And the web system thus acquire provision for a solid and secure framework that guarantees the integrity of information, its authenticity, availability, as well as confidentiality. So an expert can treat human security the same as the web server. This involves having a depth understanding of the weakness of the human being and looking to balance this between improvement of the system and the weakness presented by the human factors. If you see in recent, the human trends in the web security, the web security due to human factors. See here, is this graph visible to you clearly? Phishing attacks around is 30%. Employee actions inside the employee due to their mistake. So this type of attack is around 25%. Around 18% of the attacks are due to the external threats. If you are talking about, when you talk about the vendors means those are developing the software. So due to their weakness, around 14% of the attacks are, we experience 14% of the attacks due to the vendors' fault. Due to the internal thefts in an organization, internal thefts inside an organization. There are some attackers inside your organization. They may attack. So that attacks around 8%. So these are the total attacks that we find. Out of that, we find when the human attacks will become successful attacks. The successful attacks have the three factors: deceit, neglect, and configuration. If all become success, then there will be a successful attacks. If you have the weak configuration, weak password, weak configuration, see here. This is a configuration attack. You are not having the good password. You have configured weak password. If suppose your date of birth or something like first three characters, 1, 2, 3, like that. So due to that, there can be one kind of attack. Somebody can guess your password and may attack. So that attack is due to configuration. So if somebody able to guess your password, now this will be a successful attack. Next is neglect. What is happening here? You get your message like that. Message is like that. Do not link. Your browser give the message. Do not click. This is the untrusted link, untrusted site. Still you neglect it and click on that. So this is also due to human error. Next is, so this is neglect. Deceit. Sometimes it is phishing, like it sends a link and ask you to click on that. And you will come to know, yeah, this link has come from either the actual Facebook, income tax department, or bank. And you click on that link. You provide your credential there, and then there will be a attack. So these are the different factors that can make the successful attacks: deceit, neglect, and configuration. Now, what is phishing? This is the area everybody can research in this. Phishing, even the management people can have research on this phishing. Phishing is a kind of malicious attacks where cyber criminals create a fake website meant to look like popular online resource, a social network, online banking service, or online games, an example, and use various social engineering methods, attempts to trap users to the websites. So we are not going in detail, since see here the trends of the phishing attacks, how the phishing attack is gradually increasing. This is the data, old data of last year, right? Just check here how the phishing attack is gradually increasing. Email-based attacks. This is another how the email-based communication takes place. You see the email-based communication. So email-based communication. See, here is a mail transfer agent, mail access agents, mail authentication agents. Now when a client sends a message, that comes to the mail agents. Now here, if you get the message, due to the lack of authentication information, from where the actually mail is coming, so there can be attacks. So we are going to just close all these things due to the lack of time. Number of things are there. We are coming to the last points. How do you select the best research topic on web cybersecurity? So some tips are there. First is the brainstorm. What is brainstorm? Second is understand the background. Third is write a single topic. Then be flexible. So let us see. I will just write not in details. Okay, what are the? How do you select the best topic in web security? What are the tips here? Certain tips are there. First is the brainstorming. The first thing to do is, if you wish to select the best heading for your cybersecurity assignment, this is a brainstorm idea. Got the point? So what is there a specific matter you wish to explore? If yes, come up with a relevant topic on the subject, and using your list of topics, 0 is one of those that touch in your resource. Sure. Now you can also head over the. So see, understand the background. We are coming to that. What do you mean by that? After identifying the 3 research paper or topics, your cybersecurity assignment, it's time to do some research. Then gather necessary resources and go through them to both find both in the background information and on your heading. Then check whether your heading is matching with that or not. So next topic is write a single topic, select heading, and then again study on that. If you find there is some deviation, so don't be fixed to that topic. Be flexible. Try to modify. So these are some relevant tips that we can use in web security for the selection of your best topic. Thank you very much. Since there is a lack of time, so it was not possible to discuss, and there was interruption also during discussion. So now we come to any questions from your side?
Okay, sir. We'll end.
No question? See, you will do some work on dark web, surface web, fine. There are some research topics you can also identify in these areas. Dark.
Appealingly said by Sir, we are like a tiny dot compared to the universe, trying to command over the whole of the universe because of a beautiful gift from God, our brains. It definitely sets mankind apart from others. With that, I would like to express our deep thanks on behalf of Birla Institute of Technology, Lalpur campus, to our guest, Dr. N.P. Tiwari, for such an impressive and informative presentation and giving us an insight on the relevant topic. I would also like to express my gratitude to Dr. Vandana Bhattacharjee ma'am, director of our center, for providing such an excellent platform. My sincere thanks to Dr. Satyajit Chaudhary sir and Dr. Saeed Anis Haider sir, who took efforts to organize this event. Special acknowledgement to all my faculty members for joining this session and making this a great success. I also thank the committee members who contributed to this event. We look forward to conduct more such events hereafter and hope Dr. A.K. Sinha sir and Dr. N.P. Tiwari sir will join us in the future too. Thank you everyone.
Thanks to very much to all of you, and thanks, congratulate to the participants.
Excuse me, is there anybody? Hello.
Yes.
I think there is no session left today for today. Okay.
Just wait. No, sir is joining. Farhan, you can start.
Thank you, Farhan, for my brief introduction. I hope I'm audible to you all. Okay. Okay, so I think today is the second day of this workshop, and by this time, I hope that you have got some uh, inputs, important inputs so far, research methodology or research in social science is concerned. So, and the topic which I have been assigned, or the topic on which I will be delivering this session, Actually, it is in emotional intelligence and leadership. Basically, I am going to discuss about uh, one of my research paper, I can say, based on this theme or based on this area. So my brief presentation will be on writing a research paper or article related to your research work, etc. So just wait a while and let me upload the slides. I hope screen is visible. Yes, participants.
Yes.
Okay. So writing a research paper, and as I said, for this, the area which I have selected is one of my paper on this emotional intelligence and leadership. And while discussing these few, you can say, steps or brief framework or guidelines for writing a paper, I will also be, you can say, correlating these concepts with the actual article. Okay, so this is the actual article on this topic or on this area. So before I come to this relating these concepts with these article, now before we start or we start make a plan to write an article on any particular topic or area, these are the few stepwise process, you can say, or these are the few different steps which are involved in formulating a research article or research paper. So any research work, as we all know, it starts with literature review. And literature review, I hope you had a session on these some of these topics, and if not, we will have session on some of these topic in coming days, because this workshop is all about this research methodology part, and that too with a special reference to our focus on social science research. So some of the term you might be aware right now, and some, and you might have detailed you can say discussion on those you can say areas. And if some of these are not yet being discussed, it will be discussed in coming days in future sessions or in classes. So literature review, as I said, basically it is for the purpose of knowing the present status of the work related to your area. So related to the area related to the, you can say, field which you are planning to do the research, you we explore the literatures. What are the available literatures? What work has been done so far? Who has done the work? What methodology they have adopted in past? Because studying their approach which has been adopted in past will help you also in planning or in formulating your future plans. So literature review, again, very important. And as I said, side by side I will be just, you see, these informations, for example, these all informations which is mentioned here in article, so far this introduction parts are concerned, and some of the text is related with these different variables. So these all names basically these here denote the work of these individuals. And how we came to know about all these, of course, through literature review. So literature review is very important, and you can see the article starts with these all informations referring to the work of the social scientists or scholars in past. And one thing important which is to be given consideration here, that we should try to touch the literature uh,
Up to the recent, means if you are doing research in year 2020, at least you should try to touch the literatures 18, 19. And if your research work goes, you are taking too much time. Suppose it is going beyond 4 year, 5 year, 6 year. So again, earlier you have taken it up to 18. So in coming days, you will again have to add on few more works. So literature review, it should be up to date development or work related to that particular area. And this again is very much helpful in identifying the gaps of you can say the work which you are planning to do. You can justify your work by highlighting the gaps based on the literature review. Either gap can be in terms of unexplored area, or it can be in terms of methodology approach part. Earlier scholar, social scientists, they might have used some other approach. You may adopt some other approach. You may apply some other approach just to see the difference in outcome or difference in result. So it starts with literature review, formulating a problem statement. Now, literature review, as I said, arrange topics wise and chronological manners. Chronological manner year wise should comprise of relevant studies since the evolution of the field, and must include the latest. And if it is too early, means very past, you can skip few literatures in between, but try to start from here and try to reach up to this. In between, you can select the selective one, and definitely not possible for you to explore all the literature in between these period of time. And very important thing, yes, very important thing in literature review or writing literature review is this text citation. Now, text citation, if you will see the literatures, there are different, you can say, way of citing or quoting the, or you can say writing the references. And very common one which we use in social science is APA, American Psychological Association. Generally, this is the most common, you can say, practice which we apply in social science research. But can also change, because in some cases journals, they also very clearly specify the different, you can say, styles. As I mentioned, few more one. These are the few other one. So depending upon the, you can say, requirement, if journal is demanding some other one, you have to consider that. It also depends upon the concerned university or institution as well, because many university institutions, they also you can say are very you can say they clearly specify that this you can say citation adapt methodology or adapt practice pattern should be adopted in writing the thesis or in, you can say, projects. Now, formulating a problem statement. Now, after going through this literature review, after having brief idea about this particular concept or variables, we come to this formulating the statement, problem statement. Now, what is problem statement? Address why the topic being studied is worthwhile studying, written briefly and paragraph wise, generally restrict to half paragraph for this, again in context of research paper. But when it is the, when you are doing this thing for your project, you can say, or for your thesis, of course it will be more detailed, it will be more lengthy. So based on the literature review, we summarize, we come to the conclusion about that particular topic, that particular area, and we summarize it, and then we start working on that particular focused area or topic or field. Now, objectives. Now, now again, going back to these articles, as you can see here, this all is all about this literature review, and this again something more related to literature or be related to variables. These all so objectives. So next then we come to this objective. Now objective, not too many in numbers. Again, here it is 2 to 4, not necessarily, it can be 5 as well. In some case, it can be 6 as well. But generally, we avoid too many number of objectives. What scholars most of the time, they do mistake here. They consider the research question as research objectives. Research question is different from research objectives. Research question basically are the questions or are the, you can say, your queries, answer of which you are looking for, and probably your research work will give you the answer of those questions. So now coming back to this objective, formulating research question, clear statement of research question helps you in precise formulation of objectives. And what generally happens, or what generally we do or we should do, few research questions, they club together and they lead to one particular objectives. Now, for example, suppose you have selected two variables x and y. You want to know what is the present effect of x on y, what is x, how x affects different things, how y affects different domain of life. These are the different research questions which might be coming in your mind. Now, based on these, you will precisely decide few objectives to study the relationship between x and y. Other few research question can lead to one objective. For example, to analyze, to study the impact of x in present, you can say, context in this particular domain of life. So many questions, many research questions leading to few, you can say, precise objectives, and objectives should be broad and few in number. As I said, again I'm repeating same thing, many times we make too many objectives because whatever questions are coming in mind, whatever things we are going to look for answer in our research work, we make them it as an objective. Objective is broad. It's your broad objective, and that's why it should be very few in number. And of course, can be written point wise. Now, then methodology. Now, this is very important part of, you can say, research work as well, the important part of the article, methods. Now, methodology which you have applied or which you are going to apply, if it is in, you can say, beginning phase, if you are presenting your proposal to someone, of course, it will be used, you will be applying that, you will be using those approach in future. And if you are writing it in as a article, you will mention that you will have adopted these methods, you have applied these you can say methodology, these process you have used. So methodology part, and in coming you can say sessions or classes, I hope you will be having sessions on different important aspects of the research methodology, and these are the few important you can say uh, steps or few important activities involved in this methodology part. Research design, blueprint of research. Make a just a brief plan, because before we start doing any work, we all know we make a plan for that. So if we are going to start research work, we need to have a plan for that. How we will proceed, what will be the different steps, what we need to do first, then followed by another one, etc. So on. And if you are writing it in form of article, you will be mentioning that how you have made a plan, what was your planning, how you proceeded. So these are the important, you can say, part of this research methodology. This sample, again, very important part of this research work. And your article also, you tell about the samples. You tell about the samples, because some of the article, sometimes it is based on the analytical articles, theoretical information, secondary informations, and sometimes the articles are based on the primary data. So if your article is based on primary data, you need to first of all decide the samples, the source from where you will be collecting the information. And so when before you need to decide sample size for all these, I think you might have the sessions in coming classes. The experts will talk on these different aspects of research methodology, how to select a sample, how to decide a size of sample. There are well established formulas for these purposes, with certain confidence level depending upon the size of population, of course, total number of the target group. Tools. Now, questionnaire, the tool which we use for collecting these information from these sample. Now, tools, generally we use two types of tool. Either we design our own tool, or one another very common practice is that we use the well established, well tested tool developed by someone else. And in my article for this paper, I have used the standardized tool. We have not designed the questionnaire, we have not formulated the questionnaire, but we have used the tools. For example, just this emotional intelligence and leadership. Now, for measuring this emotional intelligence and for measuring this leadership, uh, we have the well-established tool. We have used the tool for measuring the emotional intelligence. We also have selected the tool for leadership, and of course, after testing those tools, making necessary corrections, some modifications, minor modification, if required. If required, we will come to that, this validity and reliability. Either you are designing your own questionnaire or whether you are using well-developed standard tools, in both cases, we go for this. If we are designing our own questionnaire, then this is very important. It becomes mandatory, because it might be possible that for the questionnaire which you have designed for the purpose of your research work, for the purpose of collecting data, it might be possible that it may not work properly, in the sense when you will distribute it among the samples, and when you will ask the respondents to fill it, or when you will ask the respondents to give their feedback during the interview, etc. They may not be able to understand it, or some may take it in some other sense, may give some other response or reply. Some other respondent may take it in some other context or sense, may give some reply totally, you can say, irrelevant or totally different from what others have given. So we try to test it, whether it is workable or not, whether it is working or not. And this is why we do this reliability and validity. And when we use the standard tool, which is developed by other, which is you can say has been developed by other and has been used in their own research work, we do reliability and validity. In that case, validity of course is not required, we go for the reliability. We do the reliability because might be possible that that tool has been developed in some other country and has been used in some other context. Whether it is working in your locality, whether it is working in your context or not, we need to see that, we need to know that. And for that, we do the reliability. Reliability, as we look consistency or having, if I am using this today, if I am using the tool today for collecting the information, and if you will, I will be using it tomorrow. If I am putting it at certain location for certain person, if on some other day I will be using it on some other location for some yet another person, it should be getting same type of, you can say, result. Result means not the reply, but result in the sense that consistency, not at one point of time some other information or some other feedback, at another point of time some other information or other feedback. And validity, as I said, more desirable in this context when we are formulating our own questionnaire. So for that we do the content validity. So in article we go for that all, you can say, just let me show you this. You can see this reliability, etc., this analysis, and this is very common Cronbach alpha, which we use for this purpose. And this article, this paper is basically empirical based data paper, means primary data based paper. And so far article for journals are concerned, always empirical or primary data based articles are more preferred. Okay. So validity, yes, coming back to this validity, generally we go for the content validity. We show the developed questionnaire to the experts. We take their feedback, opinion. Whenever corrections are required, needed, we do that. Sometimes in well-developed tested tool as well, we, after this reliability, if required, we make some correction or changes in that, you can say, standard tool. We call it as a standard tool. Means the tools for measuring particular, there are well-developed tools for different variables. In social science, so far, since I am much concerned with HRM, so I can say for different variables relating to this HRM, there are many standard tools available. And there is one book on Uday Parikh. You can find there number of standard tools. You can use those standard tools depending upon your research topic, depending upon the variables of your research work. There are different tools available there. If your study is based on emotional intelligence, if your study is based on leadership, If your study is based on some, you can say, other factors, motivation, etc., there are different tools, standard tools available. You can, so anytime, most of the time, anytime what research scholar, they say that they designed the questionnaire for the purpose. No, of course, depending upon your research work, you need to design it as well. But if you are selecting the variables, and for the variables, if there is well established or standard tool available, no need to design questionnaire. You can refer those tools, you can use those tools. Of course, you need to take the permission from the person who have developed, or the person or institution who have the copyright of those tools. That is very important, because it has been developed, it is the work of some other. Someone else has developed the questionnaire, and after doing their research work, it has become so much popular and acceptable that it has been started considering as a standard tool. So they have the, it is their work. So if you want to use it for your own research work, it is needed that you take the consent or approval from the concerned person or institution who have the copyright. And the same thing we did. The whatever standard tool which we have used in our article or in this paper or in our research work, we have taken the approval from the concerned institution who have the copyright of that. And with their consent, you can freely, you can use, very easily you can use it for your research work. So reliability, validity, then data analysis. Of course, this reliability, validity also involves some sort of analysis. As I said, this Cronbach alpha and etc. So after collecting the informations etc., this we do this analysis. Now testing of hypothesis. Now data analysis, again, this is not so simple. There are many techniques for data analysis. The person expert in these areas will tell you about different methodologies or different methods, different statistical tools for analyzing the data. Very important is selection of the statistical, you can say, tool or statistical method which you are going to apply for your research work, because all methods are not suitable for all research work. You see, sometimes your data are ordinal data. Ordinal data means in order. Sometimes your data is in scale form. Sometimes your data is qualitative in nature. Now the data which are qualitative in nature, in that case it becomes very difficult to apply a statistical, you can say, technique. Now again, in that case, we try to convert those qualitative data into quantitative data, and then thereafter we apply the different, you can say, statistical method. So data analysis, and as I said, it involves hypothesis. Hypothesis, again, you might have session in future on hypothesis, or you already, you हो सकता हो भी गया हो, you already had a session on hypothesis, I don't know. So null hypothesis, alternate hypothesis. Null hypothesis, simply a statement. Alternate hypothesis, stating some relationship between the variables. The research work looks for the, you can say, informations, looks for the data for validating that hypothesis. Whatever you have, it is a hypothesis, is basically your opinion, the opinion which you have developed on the basis of the literature review. Now your opinion may be right, your opinion may be wrong. You don't know what you have, what you think, or what is your you can say opinion. You don't know whether it is right or wrong. So how you will come to that conclusion? Through collecting the primary data. By collecting the data, by analyzing those data, we will, you can say, either based on that, we can say this is true, this is acceptable, this is not true, this is not acceptable, etc. So for hypothesis testing, etc., we used to analyze the data, then findings. Reporting the findings which all determine whether to accept or to reject the hypothesis. In terms of hypothesis, it can be in other terms also. Now, you see, here we have tested the hypothesis. As you can see, earlier we have developed these were the hypothesis, the following hypothesis. Now, for this purpose, this paper, this article, it is hypothesis following towards the objective of that there is no significant difference between the leadership skill of the male and female managers belonging to the millennial generation of the Indian service sector. Millennial generation, basically those who are right now in late 20s or you can say in early 40s. We define this generation age group 25, 26 to 40, 45 age group. So this study was based on these generation, these leaders of that age group, 25 to 45 or 42, you can say. So no significant difference between the leadership skills and of male and female managers. Now, self-administered questionnaire were used for the study. This for this particular purpose we have used the, you can say, questionnaire, but related to some other domain of our research work, we have used the standard developed questionnaire, standard developed or tools, available tools. Now, so these all, as you can see, are the analysis parts. Now, in order to determine whether the parametric or non-parametric test would be suited for the study, the normality test was conducted. Value of the skewness and crucials were analyzed, provided an idea about the normality of the data. So these are all for doing the adjustments of data. Now, yes, this is about the hypothesis. To test the hypothesis formulated for the study, an independent t-test. Now, this is very common test which we use for testing the hypothesis. There are many other techniques also available for testing hypothesis. But now, when to use t-test, when to use another one, it all depends upon your research objective. It all depends upon your nature of data. So we have tested this hypothesis using this, and this is the outcome of that analysis. There are software available. You just feed the data and you will get these outcomes. Now, the above hypothesis is doing that that there is a significant difference in differences existing between the leadership skill of the male and female managerial leaders belonging to the millennial generation in the Indian service sector. Now, there is no significant difference between the administrative leadership skill of the male and female managers. Now, here I am talking about this one. Now, there is no significant difference between the conceptual. So these are the analysis. So unless and until you will have the background of this hypothesis testing, unless and until you will have the background of sample size, selecting samples, different techniques of selecting samples, how to decide sample size, which statistical techniques to apply, for which type of data, which technique is suitable. Having those background, after knowing all these, only you can go for these exercise. Okay. Now, so findings. Now, managerial implications. This is very important. So far, any article or so far any research work is concerned. Here we have mentioned written it as a managerial implication. It can be practical implication as well. You try to highlight the importance of your research work so far real world is concerned. How real world is going to get benefited from your research work, or what the real life has to do with your research work, how your work or how these, you can say, research is going to contribute in actual functioning of the organization. So managerial implications or practical implications relevant of the study for the managers, organizations and policy makers, because unless and until you will highlight this correlating with your recent research work, importance of research will not get highlighted. So your contribution of your research gets highlighted by this practical implications, practical use, or managerial implications or management implications, whatever you can say. Discussions. The finding along with citing such literature which has similar kind of finding can be cited, which shall booster the present researcher's view of point. You see, your outcome of your research work, findings of your research work, if you support it with findings of some other available research works, then it shows that your research work has been in proper direction. Of course, it will not be the same. Otherwise, what will be the contribution of research work? It will not be the same, but more or less it will be highlighting, or it will be, you can say, indicating the importance of your research work related to those variables in some other domain. You can say that in earlier research work, these variables has been find useful or has been important implication on these aspects. In this research work, these aspects, of course, were also being observed, but besides that, these other aspects were also being highlighted or has been come to notice. So discussions, outcomes of your research works, outcomes of your paper article, and of course last it ends with the conclusions and some suggestions, briefly summarizing the findings and its relevance, suggesting the important and probable measures which can be adapted by individuals, teams, managers, organizations, etc. So these limitations in all articles, if not possible to touch, or you can say talk about every aspects of things in single article. Your article or some particular paper focuses on some particular aspect or on some particular, you can say, domain. So limitations, and even if you are talking about your own research work, your research work cannot answer all questions. Your research work cannot justify each and every aspects of that particular phenomenon. So limitations of your article, limitations of your research work. Either you can write it in point-wise or paragraph form. Mostly limitations can be attributed to the nature of a study, cross-sectional or longitudinal type of sector, industry, and this also gives a scope or also highlights, you can say unexplored or untouched area which other researcher can touch or can focus on in their research work in future. So limitations in one way is also can be said that it gives some indication about the scope for future research work. That because your limitation can be the research can provide the, you can say, topic or can provide the area for doing research for other scholars. So it is very important because your research work, of course, has always any research work or article is based on certain limitations. And if those limitations will not be there or if it will be removed, result will totally change or may change or may be different. So highlighting that is very important. Another researcher, future researchers may do their research work, may touch those aspects and may see what happens and how things are, you can say, taking place if seen from this perspective or if explored from this, you can say, perspective. These are the some other important things so far writing article or paper is concerned. Finding a suitable journals. There are many, you can say, indexing agencies. There are many indexing platforms in which journals are listed. So one can select any of them depending upon the level of article. One can has to decide because by doing research, by writing the article, you can say limitations, the standard of the work. So accordingly we select the journals. Every journal, every indexing agencies have their own criteria. As I said, some only accepts the empirical research or empirical database research work. This is again very important, and nowadays it is very, you can say, it is seen these type of problems frequently we find pirated versions. Journal name is same, but that is not the original one. With the popular name, some journal having some which is very famous, with that same names, having these other journals are there. So selecting the journal, the article where you are sending your article or publishing your article, deciding whether it's genuinity. So you can check, you should test it from the concerned indexing, these different indexing platforms, whether that is listed or not. So you should be careful about that. There is scope, there is gray area here because journals with duplicate, you can say, duplicacies are there existing in practice. Reference paper may be required modifications at different journals, have different formatting guidelines, word limits, citations and references as per journal guidance, guidelines, generally written in past tense and third person. This is again very important. This is again very important so far when we write the article or when we write our research work. Of course, it has already been done, so it should be in past terms and in third person. Okay, and as I said, this is one article based on that. These all implications, applying few of those topics, which areas which I have discussed. This is how we write the references. Some of you are the MBA students, project, you write the references of bibliography at the end of your project. You see how it कैसे लिखा जाता, how we write these references and what you do. And okay. Yes, participants, any question, query from your end? No question, no query. We are connected or not? So, any question, query from your side? What about others? How many of you are right now in meeting?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
25 of you are there. None of you have any question.
Sir, Bhagyashree Pandey is having a query, but she is not able to unmute herself. She's asking, my question is when to go for reliability and validity.
You see, as I said, reliability and validity is more important when you design your own tool or own questionnaire, because validity, there might be grammatical mistakes. Very simple thing I am saying. There might be grammatical mistakes. There might be, you can say, things may not be in order, may not be in sequence. Some of the things may be absurd, not relevant. So mostly we do content validity, and we do this by contacting the experts, few expert persons. By reading those contents of your questionnaire or your tool, better to say tool, a questionnaire is one of the tool. So they give their feedback or opinion. Okay, you remove this, you change this, you add this, looking into your objective which you are trying to achieve, and looking into the questionnaire which you have made for collecting data, because that questionnaire is going to be a tool for collecting the data, and from those collected data you will seek the answer of questions which you were having, or you will try to achieve the objective of your research work. So for that we go for that validity. Reliability, as I said, reliable. Look at it, the person is not reliable. XYZ is not reliable. This source is not reliable. So reliability, we just see that whether it is working properly or not. It is reliable or not. Consistency is there or not. Person is understanding it or not. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि today we are using it and we are getting some information or feedback, and if I am using same tool tomorrow with that same person or target, I am getting some other information. And if there is a variation, or if people are not able to understand it, we say that it is not reliable. Then what we do? In that case, of course, again, then we make changes. We make changes in our content of the questionnaire, or we may change our tool itself. बहुत ज़्यादा problem है, तो we may change tool itself. Now, this is one aspect when we have designed our own. As I said, we can use standard tools as well. There are many well-developed, tested standard tools for measuring different variables. For example, for measuring the intelligence of a person, there is a tool. One tool means containing a questionnaire. If we want to measure emotional intelligence, there is a tool. If we want to measure a leadership quality of a person, there is a tool. If we want to measure some other, you can say, aspect, yes, there are well-developed tools. Now, that tool might have been developed in some other context, in some other country. हो सकता है जो social scientist ने, the scientist who have developed that tool, he might have developed it and have used it in
Suppose US in America, but you are going to use it in India. Now, whether it is working here properly or not, whether it can be used here or not, how we will justify that the tool which is developed in America is usable here as well? For that we go for this reliability test, and depending upon the outcome, if required, we make some more minor corrections. Sometimes this reliability etc. also leads to removal of some content. Sometimes we add something to that existing one. So for this purpose we do the validity and reliability. Okay. More you will get the input. You see, my focus was not to discuss any particular domain or particular aspects of research methodology, because these all topics are itself requiring, you can say, long discussions. Testing validity, testing reliability, how to analyze data, how to test hypotheses, different techniques for testing hypotheses. So I just highlighted the importance of these so far research work is concerned, so far research article is concerned. Hope I have been able to answer your query.
Sir, I have a query.
Yes.
Is there any other tool rather than Cronbach Alpha? If you don't have scores, certain questionnaires won't have scores. So without scores, how could we test the reliability?
What you are saying? If you don't have certain,
if we can't calculate the scores in my questionnaire, there are certain questionnaires in which I can calculate the scores. Cronbach Alpha is dependent on the scores actually.
Exactly. That's why I said sometimes your data is qualitative in nature, sometimes your data is quantitative in nature, sometimes your data is ordinary in nature. Sometimes you use
quantitative.
If it is qualitative,
but I
what
don't
to
have
do?
Scores.
Yes, if it is qualitative, then how to do this? Your question is that.
That is chi-square test I can go for.
You see, qualitative data there again. Yes, as I said, if you concern session on this specific area, they will be providing you with more additional inputs. This in this session, I will not be in position to give you all those you can say inputs related to these different aspects of this research methodology. But as I can say, we have the techniques, we have the tools by which we can convert the qualitative data in quantitative, and then we can apply, means we can make data usable or suitable for applying those statistical technique. For skill lies there. That's why I said very important part of research work or very important part of analyzing data. Article paper is based on research work. It is one small part of research work. And ideally, the thumb rule is that try to get published 30 to 40% of your research work in form of paper. In that way, your research work becomes more, you can say, acceptable and more accurate. It will not be possible to publish all your research work in form of article, but 40% target should be there. 40% of the content of your research work should get published in form of articles. So you can select small aspects of your research work, and time to time, phase wise, you can get it published. And as I said, this leadership, emotional intelligence and leadership. Okay, here you can see it is on some different aspect. I have just touched one small aspect of area of my research work, and have done this analysis on that and have made an article on that. So for that, you need to identify the suitable statistical technique. Right now, I am very honestly speaking, I don't have that much preparation to make discussion on those aspects, but definitely I know, because I myself have used it. In my case,
by converting those data into this quantitative, you can say, required, you can say, form to apply any particular technique. So you will have to look for those. You will have to talk to expert. You will have to talk to the person who has the good exposure about the statistical technique. You will have to make a study on those different statistical technique, so that you yourself can decide, okay, this can be applied here by converting this data or by making correction or modification in this data in this form. And one reverse engineering approach also sometimes we apply, that is equally true. We use the tool, we select the variable, we you can say decide the things which we feel that will be convenient to make analysis. Okay, so for that you will have to look for suitable techniques, and for that the techniques are there. If you will do some literature work on these statistical techniques and tools, you will come to the, you can say, you will get the answer that which one to apply and how to apply. Is it anyone else? I think you, in few coming days, you will have some session on these hypothesis testing, uh, this sample, selecting sample, sample size, testing validity, reliability. I don't know the how you will see the content of your workshop, and might be some of these aspects in one workshop. Again, not possible to touch, explore all these. Actually, in one sense, it is just igniting you, to generate a spark on you, that these are the different aspects of research, these are the different areas of research, and this is how research works are done. And for doing research, I need to know this. Need to work on these aspects. So it is just to a very beginning, or you can say elementary phase.
So can we get your contact details or maybe email address?
You can get it from these HTTP. As myself, Pranav, as one of participant introduced, my email ID is pranavkumar@pitmesra.ac.in.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, it seems that no one has any other query or question. So with this, I'm ending this session then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay then, thank you.